Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a really close look, at the career of Donald Sutherland, a Canadian acting legend.
Absolutely. 6 decades in film. I mean, that's extraordinary longevity.
It really is. His work stretches from, these obscure British horror films way back in the 60s,
Right.
all the way up to huge blockbusters like The Hunger Games in the 2010s. It just shows you the kind of chameleon he was.
He really was a master of transformation.
Yeah.
That unique mix. He had intensity, sure, but also this deep intelligence and just incredible range. It definitely secured his place as, well, one of the most respected actors out there.
Definitely. So for this deep dive, we're pulling together quite a bit of material.
Yeah, we've looked at critical reviews, biographical stuff, even some historical documents, actually. We want to trace that whole journey from, Canadian student with that unusual dual degree.
Engineering and drama. We'll get to that.
Right, all the way to Hollywood icon.
Yeah.
And touch on his political side, too, which was significant, and just his artistry.
And we should start, I guess, with the recent news, which brought him back into focus for so many.
Sadly, yes. His passing on June 20th, 2024. He was 88. The cause was complications from COPD.
Yeah, huge loss for cinema. And the tributes that poured out, they all seem to touch on this kind of contradiction, didn't they? Something that really defined his career in the public eye.
That's right. It's this tension, and you see it in almost everything written about him over the years. The line was always, Donald Sutherland, one of the best actors, never nominated for an Academy Award.
It's such a persistent label.
It really is.
Yeah.
That lack of a competitive Oscar nomination, despite just overwhelming critical praise and, let's face it, huge box office success in many films, it shaped how people talked about him, about his whole legacy.
It's kind of baffling, isn't it? How do you get that level of respect? Like, fellow actors calling you a master, critics raving for decades, but not the specific nominations. It feels like he operated sort of outside the usual system.
I think that's a good way to put it. Maybe his style, sometimes it was really subtle, other times quite, grand or ambiguous. Maybe just didn't fit neatly into the boxes the Academy tends to favor.
Yeah, could be.
But, and this is important, that doesn't mean he wasn't recognized. The sources are clear. While the competitive Oscar wasn't there for a long time, he racked up plenty of other major awards.
Oh, absolutely. He was the Companion of the Order of Canada, which is huge in Canada, has a star on their Walk of Fame, and he did win big in television.
Right. That Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actor that was for Citizen X on HBO back in '95.
Great performance.
And he got the Golden Globe for that same role. Then he won another Golden Globe in 2002.
What was that for again?
That was for playing Clark Clifford in Path to War, another HBO film.
So clearly his peers, the Hollywood Foreign Press, they were recognizing him.
Exactly. So the lack of an Oscar nod feels even more specific, but it just highlights that his talent was undeniable. And eventually, the Academy did acknowledge it, thankfully, with the honorary award in 2017.
Yeah, for a lifetime of indelible characters rendered with unwavering truthfulness. That phrase, unwavering truthfulness, feels key.
It really does.
Let's dig into that. Where did it all start? Let's go back to those early years in Canada.
Okay. So he was born in St. John, New Brunswick, 1935. The family moved around a bit in eastern Canada, Hampton, then Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. His dad was in sales, but also managed the local gas, electricity, and bus company. So a pretty stable middle-class background.
But his childhood wasn't easy physically, was it? I read he had some serious health scares.
Oh, yeah. Really serious. The sources mention rheumatic fever, hepatitis, and polio.
Polio. Wow. In that era, that could be devastating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just surviving those three, especially polio, was a major thing. It kind of speaks to an early resilience, maybe.
Yeah.
You wonder if facing that stuff young built some of that depth we saw later.
Could be. And he started working young, didn't he? Like, really young.
14. He got a part-time job as a news correspondent for CKBW, a local radio station.
A news correspondent at 14.
Yep. Apparently, he also did puppetry as a hobby around then, too. So you see these little seeds of performance, even alongside being this serious young news guy.
That's fascinating. But then his education path, it wasn't exactly a straight line to acting school.
Not at all. He graduated high school in Bridgewater, went to the University of Toronto, Victoria University specifically, graduated in 1958, and here's the kicker. He got a dual degree.
Right. This is the part I love. Engineering.
And drummer.
Engineering and drama. It's such an unlikely combination.
Isn't it? It says so much that, like, the precision and logic of engineering on one hand, and the emotion, the creativity, maybe the chaos of drama on the other. He must have had quite a mind to juggle both.
But drama won out in the end.
It did. He decided engineering wasn't for him. And in 1957, even before officially graduating, he made the big move, went to Britain to study at LAMDA.
The London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. Very prestigious.
Very. But London didn't exactly roll out the red carpet straight away. His first few professional years were, they were a grind.
Paying his dues.
Definitely. He spent about 18 months doing repertory theater up in Perth, Scotland, did some West End shows, but mostly it was small parts. Bits on British TV, roles in B-movies.
And this is where we get that early horror movie phase, which is kind of fun to look back on.
Yeah, he was doing the rounds on the British horror circuit. Before he was, Hawkeye Pierce or Mr. Bennett, he was popping up in films like Castle of the Living Dead with Christopher Lee.
Wow, okay.
And anthology films like Dr. Terror's House of Horrors or Hammer Films' Die, my darling.
These sound amazing.
They're soul of their time, often quite campy roles, exaggerated stuff, very different from the nuanced work he became known for later.
But it shows you got to start somewhere, right? Building that screen presence, even in smaller genre flicks.
Exactly. And then came the big break, 1967. A major American war film.
The Dirty Dozen.
That was it. Huge hit for MGM, their biggest that year. And the story of how he got the part of Vernon Pinkley, it's pure Hollywood luck, really. Involves another famous face.
Roger Moore.
Roger Moore, yeah. Moore was starring in The Saint back then, and he'd actually directed an episode Sutherland was in.
Called Escape Route, I think.
Yes, the one. So Sutherland apparently asked Moore if he could show a rough cut of that specific episode to the producers of The Dirty Dozen.
Bold move.
It was. And it worked. They saw something in his performance in that TV episode, that sort of a slightly unhinged quality.
Yeah.
And it landed him the part in Dozen. And that film just instantly changed everything for him, put him on the map in Hollywood.
And then the 70s hit, and it feels like his career just exploded. He went from being a memorable supporting player to really defining that sort of anti-establishment leading man for the era.
Oh, the 70s were his decade, no question. And 1970 itself, I mean, what a year for him. Two absolutely iconic war films back to back.
First up, M.A.'s out Robert Altman. He's Hawkeye Pierce.
And that role, Hawkeye, it just completely redefined what a leading man could be on screen. He wasn't conventionally handsome in that Hollywood way. He was quirky, smart-alecky, deeply cynical.
But brilliant.
Exactly. Brilliant and deeply humane underneath it all. M.A.H. was a phenomenon. That dark, satirical humor landed perfectly with audiences who were, deeply disillusioned by the Vietnam War, even though the film was set in Korea.
His performance as that sarcastic surgeon just nailed the mood of the time. Made him a kind of counterculture hero.
And then, right after that, he does Kelly's Heroes.
Playing Oddball, the hippie tank commander.
Totally different character. Still in a war setting, but this time it's more of an adventure caper. Oddball's this laid-back, almost philosophical guy running a Sherman tank like it's his own private art project.
Always with the negative waves, Moriarty.
Exactly. Those two roles, M.A.H. and Kelly's Heroes, boom, boom, they just showcased his incredible range within even just the war genre, from biting satire to this eccentric comedy.
But filming Kelly's Heroes, that wasn't straightforward either. There was a serious health issue again, wasn't there?
Oh, incredibly serious. While they were filming in Yugoslavia, he got spinal meningitis. Yeah, and it was bad. He actually fell into a coma. He talked about it later quite vividly. Said he felt like he actually died for a few seconds.
Died.
That's how he described it. He remembered seeing this blue tunnel and hearing people in the room discussing his funeral arrangements.
That is terrifying and incredibly profound to have that happen right as your career is taking off like a rocket.
You have to imagine that kind of brush with death would impact you deeply. Maybe it even fueled some of the emotional rawness he brought to his roles right after that.
Makes sense. And the next big film, 1971's Klute, that brought another major element into his life.
Yes, Klute. Alan Pakula directing. A brilliant, paranoid thriller. And starring opposite Jane Fonda.
And this is where things get really interesting because their on-screen chemistry apparently spilled over into real life.
It did. They began a relationship during filming, but it quickly became more than just a romance. It became a very public, very political partnership.
Anti-Vietnam War activism.
Big time. They became maybe the most visible celebrity faces of the anti-war movement at that moment. And they didn't just give speeches. They created something called the Free Theater Associates, or FTA.
Right, the FTA tour. Tell us about that. It wasn't just protesting in the U.S.
No, this is way more direct. It was basically an anti-war review, a road show that they took around the Pacific Rim. And they performed it specifically outside U.S. military bases.
For the troops themselves.
For active duty GIs, yeah. The whole point was to, boost anti-war sentiment within the military, question the war effort directly to the soldiers fighting it. Hugely provocative.
You can imagine how the government felt about that.
Oh, they were not pleased. This was seen as genuinely subversive, a real threat to morale. And we know now, thanks to declassified documents.
What do they show?
They show that because of his FTA activities, Donald Sutherland was placed on the National Security Agency's watch list between 1971 and 1973.
On an NSA watch list?
At the request of the CIA, specifically because of his anti-war work.
That's pretty intense. Knowing you're under surveillance by your own government while you're trying to make movies and build a career.
It adds a whole other layer, doesn't it? He was genuinely putting himself and his career on the line for his beliefs.
And yet, artistically, he just kept pushing boundaries through the 70s. He didn't just play heroes or activists.
No, his range in that decade is just staggering. He seemed drawn to psychological complexity, ambiguity. He wasn't interested in easy answers.
Like in Don't Look Now, 1973. Nicholas Roeg directing.
Oh, what a film. A masterpiece of psychological horror, or maybe grief horror. Set in Venice, he plays John Baxter, this grieving father.
That performance earned him a BAFTA nomination, right?
It did, and deservedly so. He captures that state of loss, that sort of desperate, almost irrational searching for meaning after a child's death. It's devastatingly real.
And then almost immediately after plumbing those depths of grief, he does these huge European epics. Completely different scale.
Total shifts. He plays the title role in Fellini's Casanova in 1976, which is this incredibly stylized, almost grotesque take on the famous lover.
Very Fellini.
Very Fellini. And then the same year, he plays Attila Melanchini in Bernardo Bertolucci's massive historical epic, 1900.
And Attila is, well, he's horrifying. A truly sadistic fascist foreman.
One of the most repellent villains in cinema history, honestly, which is fascinating when you think about his politics.
Right, because we know he famously turned down lead roles in some pretty violent, controversial American films around that time.
Exactly. He reportedly passed on Deliverance and Sam Peckinpah's Straw Dogs.
Both huge films. Why did he turn them down?
He objected to their portrayal of violence, particularly sexual violence. He had a strong moral compass about that kind of exploitation on screen.
Okay, so he turns down those American films on moral grounds, but then he plays this monstrous fascist in 1900. How did he score that?
That's the really interesting question. And he did address it. For him, playing Attila wasn't about celebrating violence. It was about examining political evil. He saw a difference between depicting the horrors of fascism as a systemic thing versus what he saw as potentially gratuitous personal violence in the other films.
So it was about the context, the purpose behind the portrayal.
Seems so. He saw acting as a tool to explore dark aspects of humanity and history, not just a shock, bringing truthfulness, like that honorary Oscar citation said, even to monstrosity.
He rounded out the 70s with another classic, the 1978 remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh, a brilliant film. He plays Matthew Bennell, the health inspector, who starts realizing something is very wrong. He was so good at playing that kind of intelligent, increasingly anxious man trying to warn everyone about a creeping threat.
Whether it's pod people or, government surveillance.
Exactly. There's that recurring theme. Critics loved him in it. Janet Maslin said it was his most affecting performance since Clute.
And then also in 1978 comes the movie that maybe connects him to the most famous financial anecdote in Hollywood history.
Ah, yes. Professor Dave Jennings in National Lampoon's Animal House.
The pot-smoking English professor. Great small role.
Great role, huge hit comedy. And the source of the legendary blunder.
The story goes, Universal gave him a choice for his payment.
Yep. Take a flat fee up front. Sources say it was around $40,000.
Which probably seemed like decent money for a supporting role in a college comedy with mostly unknown actors back then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or he could take a percentage of the film's gross earnings. I think it was 2%.
2%. So what did he do?
He took the $40,000. He apparently thought, it's a silly little comedy. It probably won't make much.
Oh, Donald.
I know. Animal House went on to gross something like $141 million worldwide. It was a cultural phenomenon.
So that 2% would have been?
Millions. Millions and millions instead of 40,000. It's like the ultimate Hollywood what if. A hilarious, painful lesson in underestimating anarchic comedy.
Okay, so moving out of the wild 70s, the 1980s see another shift for him, right? He becomes more of this established, serious, dramatic actor.
Definitely. He starts the decade with arguably one of his finest performances in Robert Redford's directorial debut.
Ordinary People, 1980.
Yeah. He plays Calvin Jarrett, the father in this family just reeling from the death of one son and the emotional fallout with the other. It's a very quiet internal performance compared to some of his 70s work.
What stood out about it for critics?
It was the subtlety. Calvin is trying so hard to connect, to hold things together, dealing with his wife's coldness and his surviving son's trauma. Critics like Vincent Canby praised how Sutherland showed this deep well of love beneath a seemingly reserved exterior. Canby called it his best film role in years.
And Ordinary People won Best Picture at the Oscars.
It did. Redford won Best Director. Timothy Hutton won Best Supporting Actor. Mary Tyler Moore was nominated.
And Sutherland.
Got a Golden Globe nomination, but
Yeah.
no Oscar nomination.
There it is again. The pattern continues. He's central to a Best Picture winner, gives a career highlight performance, gets recognized elsewhere, but not by the Academy voters for his own work.
It's truly remarkable. It just reinforces that his particular brand of excellence, often found in ensemble pieces or complex emotional landscapes, just didn't fit their mold for leading actors at the time. He continued doing strong work through the 80s, like in the anti-apartheid drama, A Dry White Season in '89.
Then the 90s arrive, and he seems to carve out this niche playing characters connected to secrets, power, ambiguity.
Exactly. He became the go-to guy for roles that required gravitas and a hint of something hidden. Think about his role in Oliver Stone's JFK in 1991.
Mr. X, unforgettable scene.
Totally. That shadowy intelligence figure meeting Kevin Costner's Jim Garrison on the park bench, laying out this vast conspiracy. It was a small role, but pivotal. He embodied that sense of knowing too much, the burden of hidden knowledge. The character was supposedly based on L. Fletcher Prouty.
And he kept playing variations on that theme. The sophisticated, maybe morally shady art dealer in 6 Degrees of Separation in 93. And then the outright corporate villain in Disclosure the next year, opposite Michael Douglas.
Yeah, the predatory CEO. He could do sophisticated menace, cynical power.
Yeah.
He had that range.
And while the Oscar nominations still weren't happening for his film work, television continued to reward him.
Big time. That's where he really scored competitively in the 90s and early 2000s. We mentioned Citizen X already winning the Emmy and the Golden Globe in 95.
Playing that Soviet colonel dealing with a serial killer.
Right. It showed how well suited he was to that format, premium cable dramas that allowed for complex, character-driven stories. He wasn't just acting. He embodied the whole weight and frustration of that collapsing Soviet system.
And he won the Golden Globe again later for Path to War.
2002. Playing Clark Clifford, the Washington insider, in that HBO film about the lead-up to Vietnam. Again, perfect casting. He excelled at playing those powerful historical figures wrestling with huge decisions.
Throughout all this, he stayed very connected to Canada, didn't he?
Oh, deeply. Very patriotic. He was made an officer of the Order of Canada way back in '78, and then elevated to companion, the highest level, in 2019.
And he had that very public role during the Vancouver Olympics.
Yeah, the 2010 Winter Olympics. He carried the Olympic flag in the opening ceremony, and maybe more memorably, he narrated the whole thing. His voice just has that authority, that reassuring quality.
Which advertisers definitely noticed too.
Oh, yeah. His voice became iconic in commercials. Delta Airlines, Volvo, Simply Orange Juice. You hear that voice, and it just conveys seriousness, trustworthiness, even if he's talking about orange juice.
Huh. And film-wise, later on, he kept bringing that gravitas. He was one of the old astronaut buddies in Clint Eastwood's Space Cowboys.
Good fun in that.
But maybe a standout role from the 2000s, showing a different side, was in Pride and Prejudice.
Yes. Playing Mr. Bennett in the 2005 Joe Wright version.
He was wonderful in that. So warm and witty, the calm center in that chaotic household.
Absolutely. He provided the perfect counterpoint to Brenda Blethyn's Mrs. Bennett. And there's that one scene.
The one where Lizzie comes to him about Darcy.
That's the one. The Independent called it arguably the most moving scene in the whole movie. Just his quiet understanding and paternal love. It showed he could deliver profound emotion with incredible subtlety.
That ability to command the screen, whether subtly or grandly, must be why he could transition so effectively into that huge franchise role later in his career.
You mean President Snow?
Exactly. The Hunger Games. Starting in 2012, that introduced him to a whole new generation.
It really did. And what perfect casting that was. Coriolanus Snow, the ruler of Panem, he was chillin'.
But not in a cartoonish way.
No, that's what made him so effective. It was all quiet menace, calculation, that sort of elegant, chilling control. He brought all that experience playing complex figures, the ambiguous spies, the fascists, the powerful CEOs, and distilled it into this perfectly terrifying, restrained villain.
And the fans loved him in it. Critics, too. It was seen as a real highlight of those films.
It felt like a culmination, in a way. Taking that skill for ambiguity and applying it on this massive blockbuster stage. And it was really that entire body of work, 6 decades of it, that led to the Academy finally giving him his due.
The honorary Oscar in 2017?
At the Governor's Awards, yeah.
Right.
For a lifetime of indelible characters rendered with unwavering truthfulness. It felt like, okay, finally, recognition for the unique path he took.
And that legacy, it extends to his family, too. He founded quite the acting dynasty.
He really did. He was married 3 times. Lois Hardwick, then Shirley Douglas, mother of Kiefer.
Right, Shirley Douglas, also a prominent Canadian actor and activist.
And then his long-term partner, French-Canadian actress Francine Rosset, who he married later on. They met filming Alien Thunder back in the early 70s.
And 5 kids in total, including several actors.
Yep, Kiefer, of course, is the most famous. But also Rossif and Angus are actors, too.
And the names he gave his sons. There's a story there, right?
It's fantastic. It shows how intertwined his life and his work were. He named 4 of his sons after directors he'd worked with.
Okay, let's hear this. Kiefer is named after
Warren Kiefer, who directed Donald in his very first feature film, that Italian horror flick, Castle of the Living Dead.
Wow, full circle. And Rogue.
Named after Nicolas Roeg, who directed him in Don't Look Now.
Makes sense. Rossif.
After the French director Frédéric Rossif. And Angus, his son, with Francine Rosset, his middle name is Redford.
After Robert Redford. Ordinary people.
Exactly. It's just such a personal, meaningful way to honor the collaborators who shaped his journey. His family history is his cinematic history, in a way.
And speaking of history and deeply held beliefs, his political activism didn't fade away over the years either.
Not at all. He remained consistent. He spoke out against the Iraq War, for instance, maintaining that anti-war stance he had established way back during Vietnam.
And he used his platform, too, didn't he? Didn't he blog during an election?
He did. During the 2008 U.S. presidential election, he wrote blog posts for the Huffington Post, openly supporting Barack Obama. He wasn't afraid to be vocal.
And he even took on the Canadian government at one point about voting.
Yeah, that was in 2015. There was a rule preventing Canadian citizens who'd lived abroad for a long time from voting in federal elections. And he was furious about it. He gave interviews saying, I'm Canadian. How can you take my vote away? He felt really strongly about it.
Did that get resolved?
It did eventually. In 2019, the Supreme Court of Canada struck down that rule, allowing long-term expats to vote. So he made his point.
It's that blend, again, the passionate citizen and the dedicated artist. How did people try to sum up his unique acting style in the end?
There were some great attempts. Alyssa Wilkinson described it as a marriage of suspicion and empathy.
Suspicion and empathy, that sounds right.
Yeah, she argued he wasn't an actor who just disappeared into roles. Instead, she said the role disappeared into him. And the result was always unforgettable because he brought his own intelligence, his own slightly off-kilter energy to everything.
That makes sense of how he could play heroes and villains, sometimes blurring the line. What did other actors say? Helen Mirren worked with him later on.
She did, in The Leisure Seeker. She called him one of the smartest actors I ever worked with, praised his wonderful inquiring brain and his knowledge on all sorts of subjects. She felt it was that combination, huge intelligence plus deep sensitivity, that made him a legend.
And Jane Fonda, given their history.
Her tribute was simple but powerful. Donald was a brilliant actor and a complex man.
Peter Bradshaw at The Guardian called him an aristocrat of screen actors. That feels apt.
It does. Utterly unique, irreplaceable. The respect was just universal right up to his very last roles.
Before we wrap up, we should mention the memoir he wrote.
Yes. Made up.
Yeah.
But still true. It was supposed to come out in November 2024, very soon after he passed.
And it's been delayed.
Yeah, the release date got pushed back quite a bit to February 2026 now. So we'll have to wait a little longer to get his own perspective, his own stories on that incredible life and career.
And his final screen role, it sounds like he worked right near the end.
He did. His last performance was in the series Lawmen. Bass Reeves, David Oyelowo, his co-star, shared a really moving tribute.
What did he say?
Oyelowo said that watching Sutherland work, even at the end, you could see the glint in his eye, was still that of an inquisitive, hungry artist, still on the hunt for the truth. Still searching, still pushing, right to the end.
Never coasting, always the artist.
Exactly.
So, if we try to pull all this together, the long career, the illnesses, the activism, the awards he won, the big one he didn't for so long, what's the key takeaway from this deep dive into Donald Sutherland?
I think maybe it's about the power of versatility and sticking to your own artistic truth, regardless of what the industry's main awards bodies might recognize at any given moment. His career proves that you can become an aristocrat, as Bradshaw said, build this immense respect by just consistently delivering truthful, complex performances across every genre.
From Hawkeye to Calvin Jarrett to President Snow.
Right. That ability to be completely convincing as the cynical surgeon, the heartbroken father, and the chilling dictator, that's mastery. He didn't just play parts. He reshaped what a leading man could look like, sound like, be like on screen.
A powerful legacy indeed. And that leaves us, and leaves you, with one final thought to chew on, something that emerges from looking at his whole life.
Given everything we've discussed about his incredibly strong, lifelong political convictions, his anti-war stance, his social democratic beliefs, pushing back against authority, how did he reconcile that deeply held personal conscience with his artistic choices to portray some of cinema's most truly monstrous villains?
Like Attila in 1900, or President Snow, characters representing the very forces he opposed in real life.
Exactly. How did he navigate that? That tension between the artist's need to explore darkness and the citizen's moral compass. It's a complex, fascinating aspect of Donald Sutherland's legacy, something worth thinking about.